Hi friends, Respawn have made changes to matchmaking finally in Apex Legends, which should make the games you're playing feel fairer. I'm going to explain how matchmaking works in Apex Legends in today's video using the new system. Now this video is going to be super detailed, but I will be using exact information and data from Respawn, so this video should give you the best understanding of matchmaking you'll ever get. So let's get into it. There are 3 components to make matchmaking in Apex Legends, which decides who's going to be in your lobby plus who your teammates are going to be. Those components are progression, skill rating, and matchmaking. Let's start by looking at progression first, and this is essentially your account level, and it's the most visible part of matchmaking to you. The progression system in Apex Legends is obviously designed to reward you as you progress through the game, in the form of packs and other things like legend tokens. The rewards are more on the engagement side, but progression does also influence in-game behavior. If you think about the challenges, if you're trying to do a challenge where you have to play a certain legend or weapon which you might not normally use, that would impact your game, and therefore progression has to be taken into account by the matchmaking system. If you look at this graph, interestingly you can see the disparity between skill on the y-axis going up is less prevalent at lower levels in terms of account levels compared to the higher account levels as you look left to right. Also, you can see typically skill is increasing gradually as your account level goes up, as you see those boxes get higher. Of course, there are always going to be outliers, so you'll get some low account level players that are actually better than some high account level players and vice versa, and those are just considered outliers. Now this leads us into the second component of matchmaking, which is skill. Now this is one of the key parts of matchmaking, and it's also where the biggest change is going to be to improve things in Apex Legends. Let's start by understanding how skill rating works. And skill rating is the numerical representation for a player's skill level. This part is hidden from us, the players, and the main reason for that is to prevent people exploiting or influencing it inorganically. Now there are 2 main ways to view the distribution of skill. The first is the continuous Gaussian distribution. This graph is an example of how that would look. The percentage is the number of players in pubs, while each blue bar represents a different skill rating, obviously increasing when you look left to right. The majority of players you can see sit in those higher bars in the middle. On the right you've then got the most skilled players, and as you look left at the start of the graph, those are the least skilled players. So the continuous view is useful when the skill rating algorithm can accurately and precisely predict the skill of a player. However, that's not quite the case for Apex Legends, and as such they tend to use this second approach, and the second approach is the discrete buckets view. In this approach, players are grouped into 4 or 5 big discrete groups of skill, represented by the bars in this graph. If you think of 1 as the lowest skill and 4 as the highest skill, this gives you an idea of how those big buckets look, and this is actually what Apex Legends uses for pubs currently. Obviously when you look at this graph you'll see the buckets are quite wide because you've probably got a lot of players sitting in each of these buckets, so that's the skill part. The final part of matchmaking is the matching part. The matching algorithm is essentially responsible for determining who gets put in your game, and it does use the skill rating to decide that, and on top of that the matching also chooses who your team members are going to be when you're in that lobby. Part of that is based on availability and the other part of it is based on skill, and the algorithm's got to essentially decide and balance the speed of finding a game for you versus the gap in skill level of the lobby. Once it's decided who's going to be in the lobby, that's when it then decides how to match up those teams. There's 2 ways that squads can be matched up. If you look at this diagram, it shows you 9 players. Now in this scenario, let's imagine they're all solos, and the system can match them in a couple of ways. Firstly, they can match them vertically like this, and you'll see the players with a high skill level 7, 8 or 9 will be matched with 1 mid player of the 4, 5, 6 skill level, and also 1 bottom level player, the 3, 2 or 1 level, and that means you've got kind of a variety of skill in your group. And this is actually what Apex Legends uses for pubs at the moment, which is why sometimes when you're playing pubs, you might feel your team's really unbalanced and you're just carrying your team. Now the other way to slice players is horizontally, where you essentially put skill groups close together in a squad, and this is actually how Apex Legends does it currently for ranked. They do this because they want to reduce the carry burden. Now obviously there will be ranked games where you're still probably having to carry your teammates. It's not a perfect system, and the other part of that are the other factors such as player availability and things like your ping, so sometimes that will affect the players in your lobby. So that's the scenario for how you'll get put in a squad as a solo. Going in as a pre-made squad, the matchmaking is slightly different. Now this diagram shows you how they can decide the skill level of your pre-made squad. You see the option here is to either take the lower score with the 2 or the higher score with a 7, or alternatively they could take the average score at a 5 or the weighted average score at a 5.7. So essentially you've kind of got 4 different ways they could score you in terms of skill rating as a squad, and that's a pre-made squad. Now currently the Apex Legends matchmaking algorithm takes into account the highest skill rating for your pre-made squad. Now one of the reasons Respawn said it was initially built like this is mainly to protect new players against boosting and smurfing while also trying to keep it competitive. So that gives you an idea of how those squads are formed. If we go back to the overall matchmaking picture, when they build a match of 60 similarly skilled players, they do try to do it where they put all trios in terms of pre-made trios together, all pre-made duos together, and then all the solos together. But in reality, it's hard to get 60 pre-made squads in one game. And that's why quite often you'll end up with mixed lobbies, and in fact why you as a solo player might find you're put up against a triple stack that are clearly pre-made and on comms to each other. So that's how it currently works, but there will be a number of big changes and improvements made on this. The new algorithm will do a better job at compensating for the competitive advantage that these pre-made duos and trios have, and you can see this in the next diagram here I put on screen. Their experiments show how the new system could improve the way you're playing, and you see here more players are getting 1 or more kill in their lobbies, which suggest more even lobbies and better matchmaking. In addition to this, there are some other changes. Currently all of the matchmaking I've explained is done for each mode in Apex Legends slightly differently with different skill ratings and matchmaking algorithms. In the new system, they're all going to be using the same skill rating technology, and what that means is through each mode, you should see a lot more consistency in how your lobbies are being created. They should all feel fairly balanced in terms of skill level. As I mentioned ranked, let me also say recently you might have seen predators in your lobby, and I mean current predators, even when you're a bronze or a silver or a gold. And this is happening because Respawn are testing true skill as a form of skill rating players, and part of this is to make matches fairer, and the other part is to try and reduce the amount of smurfs in the game. The other thing the new matchmaking system will do is also focus on accuracy rather than having those big buckets which I explained earlier, and again this is another way it should lead to fairer lobbies and smaller skill gaps in those lobbies. One other thing you should know about the new system is that it will be predictive of players' performance in Apex Legends, so this graph gives you a good idea of how the new system will balance out. Where the average is less than 1, so looking left of the middle of the graph, the squad is a lower skill and therefore their win rate is much lower. As the skill rating increases, so does the win rate. So 0 in the middle is what they're aiming for because it means everyone is of a similar skill and you have an even 50-50 chance of winning every encounter and placement. Now the second part of the system will also look at not just these closer skill lobbies but also the time frame they're matching them, and what that means is the new matcher will predict the distribution of incoming players and dynamically choose the optimal trade-off between skill differences and wait time. And you can see in this graph showing the wait time versus the time of day, you can see those higher lines near the start were those higher skill players having to wait a little bit longer before they would find a game, and that's mainly because there are less higher skill players in the game. The good news about that means that they won't be putting those high skill players in your lobby just because they've been waiting a long time, which is kind of what happened before this new system started rolling out, and that's why you would often find predators and masters in your lobbies. So in essence, the new system will follow the matchmaking components I've shared in this video, but it will just tweak them to try and make the skill gaps closer and make the matches more fair. There is one final thing you need to bear in mind. Your skill rating will be dynamic and change over time, and what that means is you'll likely still find variations in the skill of your lobby. You can see in this graph an example of the skill rating being adjusted to find a player's actual skill, and it takes 19 games roughly before the skill starts balancing out and you can see the lobbies get a little bit fairer. Now if you're watching this and thinking your game doesn't feel any different yet, it's because they're rolling out the matchmaking changes in phases and they're doing it region by region and server by server. It's a slow process and they're definitely testing out things as they go along. So if you're not finding that matchmaking's improved, it's simply because they haven't rolled it out to your server yet. And the very final thing I want to touch on, because it does relate to matchmaking, is retention and engagement. The reason I mentioned these two things is because I know there's been a lot of other videos and discussions about them, so I thought I'd share how Respawn describes their use of retention. And they essentially say the system itself doesn't look at retention. The system looks at skill rating and making fair matches in a reasonable time. and the goal of that is to create fun matches for everyone. However, it's kind of hard to measure fun, so retention they use as a measurement or a metric to see where the system needs to be adjusted. So for those of you that do work in an MPD or software development, and you've been in a job for a while doing that kind of thing, you'll kind of see retention as what's referred to as a KPI, a key performance indicator. So while it's not something the system physically uses from a coding or algorithm perspective, it is a KPI that's used to adjust the system to try and make it better. Now I know this was a long video, but hopefully it gives you a really good understanding now of how matchmaking works in Apex Legends. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you've got, so leave your questions in the comments down below, and while you're down there don't forget to like and subscribe, I really appreciate it. For now though, thanks for watching and I'll catch you later.